What's going on, everybody? It is the Tailgate. As always, we got Michael up here,
That's me.
up that way. We
That way.
got Dennis over here,
Yep, that's it. That would be me.
and then I'm Luke. So we are going live for the second time.
Yep.
Gonna figure this stuff out, but
We're hoping this one's a little bit better than last week.
hopefully it'll be a little bit better. We're getting a little more comfortable, but we're going to talk what if FSU is overrated or if Georgia was underrated coming into the season. We're going to talk about week 1 going in and what our games of the week are going to be. So join us. Make sure you comment during the feed. We'll try to respond to you, and we'll see you in a second.
All right.
What's going on, guys?
So I'm just making sure. Yep, we're good. We're good and live. I'm just checking all of the sources and making sure everything's there. But yeah, man, we're good. How's everybody having? How's everybody's day been? Week been? Everything like that. I'm just excited because football's back.
Football, man. I've been good. New job, so I'm tired. I'm learning a lot.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, you're right. Like having football. That was an interesting, the conversations I had with my wife and my kids this weekend as I have football going on my phone. They're like,
Sure.
"Oh, it's that season again." I'm like, "Yes,
Season again.
yes, it is." I will be present, but maybe not available.
But
Physically there, just the lights not on.
Exactly.
That's right. Well, so before we get into this past weekend, there's some like newish news that came out today. Dennis was sharing it with the group earlier, but I think is probably the most pertinent thing that we're, just from a college football that's going to, if it ends up being one, true, and two, if it actually ends up going through, like it really could rock the college football world. And that is no more spring portal. The NCAA is looking at removing the spring portal.
Yeah, no more spring cleaning.
Yep.
I'm definitely not a fan of it. I feel like they chose the wrong time.
Yeah.
Wrong quarter to close.
Yeah. Well, no, yeah. They as like it again, I know that the NCAA kind of got hammered last year by the courts in West Virginia about like the fact that they couldn't limit the amount of times a player went through the portal. But it's like, is this their response? Like, well, fine, we'll just cut off one of your portal times. It's like, why not cut off the worst portal that there is, the one right before bowl season?
Yeah, I definitely think it's, maybe not necessarily a response directly to that. But there was, think about the portal. Like it just was that, who's going to become available? Are we going to lose somebody? I think that having two is a little much. And while I want the kids, I want the players to have that ability, when a coach leaves or, at the end of a season, once the season is completed, which is different for different teams, those seasons end at different times. I think that it's a good thing to have one portal, but like you both have mentioned, that portal should be the one that's not the spring. Like it shouldn't be that one.
Because by then, like the coaches, for the most part, can be figured out. Like you already know how each team finished off at a strong note or anything. So it's like spring is where it should be kept, not during bowl season. Because bowl season, I know we all talked about how half the team, more than half teams were missing like 80% of their players, it seemed like, or all the key players.
Well, and some of that issue, I think, will get taken care of with NIL. I think it's going to be an interesting few years with all the rule changes, with the portals, with the NIL, all that kind of stuff. Because I'm going to bet that there are going to be teams who are going to start writing into these NIL contracts that it does include bowl games. Because let's be honest, this bowl season, while there were some games, like you go back to like the USC game, that was a lot of fun watching their new quarterback kind of ball out when Caleb Williams decided to sit out. You get some of those games, but then you also get the ones where, FSU, Georgia. Let's just be real. Like, yes, FSU lost a majority of their talent. Georgia didn't have some of theirs. We won't go into it, but there's just this like depravity. deprivation. I don't know.
Deprivation.
There's not as many people.
I don't
the word of the day is still trying to learn.
Right. Well, yeah.
More depraved sport.
It makes it more depraved. But yeah, it's just one of those things where you're going, it just wasn't fun. It wasn't as fun. The bowl season wasn't fun. So I think it's a response. We'll see kind of what it does, but they definitely made the wrong call.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, and again, like you're not going to be able to stop the players that are going to opt out of a game because they're going into the NFL, but you at least can mitigate the extra loss to your team right before what used to be like the biggest game of the year for you or for your team.
Everybody was looking forward to it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and think about how crazy it like. So I kind of am mirroring this to like cell phones, because you remember when cell phones first came out, they were huge, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was like, let's see how tiny we can fit this cell phone, and now all of a sudden screens are getting huge and we're getting big cell phones again. It's the same thing with like bowl games. Bowl games used to be, man, there were like 30 of them, like 30 bowl games. You had to be one of the top 60, 64 teams to get into a bowl game. It was an honor. You wanted to play. Guys came in, even if they're going to the NFL to play. And then you started having more and more bowls. And it became this like, yes, for people who love football, you love watching, but you've got the Pop-Tart Bowl, which Dennis, I know you love, but let's be real. It's the Pop-Tart Bowl.
That one we got to keep. I don't care what you say. That one we got to keep.
But you've got all these bowl games to where it gets to this point where you're like, do I really want to go watch a 5-7 team play a 6-6 team? Not really. Sure. And so now you see people opting out. The games are not as interesting. So are they going to start cutting bowl games back? I mean, they're not, because there's too much money in it.
College football playoffs, we're going to probably have more bowls. I feel like that's the only that's going to come out of it right there.
Well, and I think what needs to happen, and I've seen the writing on the wall, and I've seen the things, there needs to be like an NAIA for football. If you didn't make the college football playoffs, if you're not in one of those top bowls, here's another playoffs, and you can come and you're NAIA. You're not quite as good, but you can come win this championship.
Celebrate something.
Just get rid of bowl games and just have all playoffs.
Listen. Let's just get everyone participate in trophies.
Craziness.
Yeah.
Well, it would technically be less participation trophies, because you'd have to go through the whole.
I'm just saying we just give everybody participation trophies and call it a day. Just remove all the bowls. Remove anything that's of any kind of semblance of anything fancy. I mean, again,
I will never talk college football again. I will quit.
I mean, why do you keep score at that point?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we're going to play flag football there with all the rules changes. We're just going to continue to, take after the incredibly wimpy NFL, and make it really hard for people to tackle. So, but it doesn't really lead us into our main topic for the evening. But we went through week 0, which is always fun. We also got to see one of the teams that was one of the top teams, or at least rated was one of the top teams as last year. But they went to Ireland and played against one of their, one of their conference opponents. They were a 2-touchdown favorite, roughly. And they lost. So it begs the question, is FSU overrated or is Georgia Tech underrated?
I think personally, I think it's a little bit of both.
Sure.
Georgia Tech, I think, is actually a great team that I feel like nobody really kind of gave them attention. Like if you averaged just last year over 200 yards rushing, like that's not an easy feat to do, especially no matter if you're in a Power 4 conference. I feel like regardless of that. And then they added a few players, but Florida State, I feel like with DJ, I'm always going to mess up his last name.
DJU, man. DJU.
If you want to major in just throwing little dump passes more than 2-3 yards, he's the perfect guy. But if you're trying to go more than a 5-yard pass, like FSU really just kind of forgot all about that.
Did you see the stat for him? At one point, he was 12 of 14 for 94, 96 yards, and the average air time or air yardage in his pass was negative 0.1. So like he wasn't throwing the ball past the line of scrimmage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's easy. Like, Dennis, last year, you consistently made fun of Joe Milton because of this.
This is like a new version of
Florida's
doing exactly that.
It really feels like Clemson fans are basically telling FSU fans, "We told you so."
Yeah.
And it's just like last year when Michigan fans were telling Tennessee fans, "We told you so." And it's just I think the difference is that Milton had a higher just raw talent threshold. That's why he actually will do decently well in the pros. He may not be a starter, but he'll at least be a good backup in the pros versus DJU, who may never make it to the NFL.
Like Milton, at least I'll give him this. When given the opportunity, he will throw beyond the sideline. Now, did it matter which side he'll throw to? No. But he would throw it beyond the sidelines.
Yeah, his issue was accuracy. But the thing is, everybody will point to, well, DJU had a 70% accuracy. So did Milton. But it's easy when you're throwing behind the line all the time.
Right.
All the time. That's easy. So
just get it to them and make them do the work. I mean, this is one of the things that for me, I like some of the rules that I've always hated is I've always hated that a quarterback gets credit for yards after catch. Like to me, it's like you completed the pass, way to go. You got 20 yards on the pass. The receiver got an extra 40 on yards after catch, but you don't get credit for that. And I know it's never going to happen. And the same reason that the quarterbacks get, a receiver gets his hands on the ball and then gets hit and tosses it up in the air and it's an interception. Like you kind of take the good with the bad. But it's these kind of plays and you look at it because this is where it's like when you really dig into stats and you really look at what the stats mean. Yes, average, I don't even know what the stat is, average yards in the air per pass, whatever it was, is an obsolete stat that you never look at. But when you really put it in context like this, you see that accuracy 70%
means nothing.
Is not that great when you're just doing bubble screens and dinks and dunks. Yeah. So, but for me, what I was really impressed with was Haynes King, quarterback for Georgia Tech. Like he stood in there, he took a beating. There were 2 or 3 plays at least where he was getting hammered by Florida State's line and still got an accurate pass, still got it off, got it to the receiver. And then Florida State's line, weren't they considered one of the best in?
They were self-ranking themselves as one
okay.
They were self-ranking themselves as one of the best in the country. And that was one of the things that I think has been the most hotly debated topic is their offense and defensive line being so highly rated before the season. Every source that has said that has only been hearing it from inside inside FSU. It's not like an external source is going, this is an incredibly deep roster. This is incredibly so it's sus.
Yeah.
They're good, but they're definitely not. I don't even think they're the best in the ACC. But I feel like what they had last year for at least their defensive line definitely had a good argument.
Sure. But it was really because of one player.
Yeah. I mean, I would definitely agree with that.
So,
but King is
absolutely not.
King has got the guy that I'm watching this year after that performance in Georgia Tech. I mean, I'm with you, Dennis. If I'm answering this question, I think it's a little bit of both. I think that FSU, you're really seeing what the big name players that left last year meant to this team. They're coming in. Yes, they've got some great talent, but is it really going to be something that's going to keep them in the top 10? And I don't think so. For Georgia Tech, I think that they have kind of the perfect situation. They're coming in. Nobody's really looking at them to be dominant in the ACC. I wasn't, I didn't have them up there.
I mean, they kind of have a tough schedule right there too.
They do, but the way that they play, I mean, if they play this way every single game, they're going to be a force. They're going to be a force to reckon with. And
literally, it's like if they play like they played on Saturday, and just because the other thing that's important to note is, and I think the stat I remember hearing before the game started was their run defense was one of the worst in the ACC last year. And their average was like 170 something yards on the ground that they allowed. And they allowed, and I remember the commentator saying, man, we don't expect, a two-digit stat for this game, but man, because FSU's loaded at, that's what everyone, FSU's loaded at this position and this position. But they're like, but man, if they get like to a low 3-digit, that'd be impressive. They were in the 2 digits.
Yeah.
For this game with all of those, incredibly esteemed running backs who are good running backs. I'm not saying they're bad. Yeah. It's like, we actually are fans of one of them in particular. But it was clear that there was a lot of development there on the defensive line. Like really, they just made little tweaks, and they were able to push around a much more veteran offensive line, which, so it's like Georgia Tech had all the wheels just turning at the right time. They had all their gears in position, and they were in sync, and it just it really did work. And it made for an awesomely, like, wonderfully fun game to watch.
Oh, it was a great game.
It was like, I loved it.
My favorite was Georgia Tech's coach after the game. They're interviewing him, and he's just like, just run the ball.
Just run the ball.
Like, that, oh man.
You can tell good old offensive lineman or line coach.
Yes. Yeah.
Like his game overall was like a throwback to like how college football was when I was growing up. Just
sure.
Especially when it came to not only the way they ran it, but the linebacker for Georgia Tech, number 44, that old school cowboy collar and everything like that. And I was like, I missed the look that defense players had to have. Like, we just like, you don't want to mess with them. Like, there's just going to be something about him.
Yep.
And so I don't know, this game definitely did more than I thought it was going to be for me.
It scratched the right itch just to get everyone excited for this upcoming season. It also, to me, really set a tone that we're going to be going into an upset year. There's going to be a lot of weird upsets, and I don't know if everyone's prepared for it. And so I don't know if you guys want to go ahead and hop into our game of the week, or if you guys have any more points you guys want to bring up about FSU. But
well, I mean, I think beforehand, one of the other things I would, the games that we could talk about, like, we're talking about the upsets, we're talking about that.
Oh yeah,
the Nevada SMU game.
Almost
that one. What was it? How many? I mean, personal fouls were ridiculous.
Oh yeah, SMU looked like a terrible team.
Yes. SMU had a player ejected for spitting on one of the Nevada players. I mean, it was one of those chippy games, not even chippy. It was almost just kind of downright bad. But it kind of fun to watch. Yeah, it was a dirty game. But again, same type of thing. This took me back to, what was it, Bill Romanowski, who spit in JJ Stokes' face back in '97. But it's just bad.
A dirty player across his NFL career, man.
Yeah, and he was known for being dirty, but again, when you were talking about the upsets this year, and I think that's the thing that I'm most excited about, is when you look across every single team at this point, everybody's got a weakness, and you can pinpoint what everybody's weakness is. You've got Saban gone, so there's a whole new element of like, okay, where's this going to go? So
I think just kind of adding to that, though, just kind of what we first mentioned with the portal, the fact that a lot of teams, if you're not basically a top 5 or possibly even a top 10 team, in this case, I know Florida State was top 10, but like with the portal, a lot of more teams are like around that mark of just being a top 25 team. We're just kind of flirting around there. Now have the ability to be able to upset teams that before probably weren't going to be such an easy thing or even possible thing. Now, with players able to transfer to almost any school now and be able to win just overnight, it's just like all these things are very much possible than ever before.
Yeah, and with NIL, like, teams that are going to be able to afford somebody, or somebody can go somewhere and go, you know what, I can go close to home and I can make some money and play, and offensive linemen. Everybody talks about offensive linemen, why you wouldn't want to get, let's talk David Sanders. Like one of the things that I've heard for a lot of Ohio State fans say, at least, why would you want to go to UT, come to Ohio State? And it's like, hey, UT, he's probably getting paid just as much. His NIL deal was crazy.
It's a big program.
But it's a big program. It's closer to home. And like, why not? Like, what an offensive lineman, a 5-star offensive lineman, is going to get just as much eyes at a lower, if UT, I'm not saying UT was this, but if UT's middle of the pack SEC, he's getting just as many eyes because he's a good offensive lineman. If he isn't playing Ohio State or Alabama or anywhere like that. So they kind of have a little bit different perspective on what they're going to do. Yeah, I'll take the money and stay close to home. Or, hey, I liked X, Y, or Z. So there's so many more factors in it now with the way these guys are talking NIL and all this kind of stuff.
We know how much he was offered by Tennessee, and we know how much he was offered by Ohio State. Ohio State offered him more, and he decided to stay at Tennessee. So it was clearly probably a
no income state here in Tennessee, man. So that's right. Obvious difference.
He's in North Carolina, so it's like he's a lot closer to home. Just like you were talking about, proximity definitely plays into that. But from what I've been hearing from other recruits is that, especially like David Sanders and stuff like that, Heupel and his team have been recruiting players a lot longer than some of the other coaching staffs. And I know I don't think it was David Sanders, but I think it was one of the other 4-stars they just got recently who said they were recruiting me in like my freshman or sophomore year in high school, like well before I had a star next to my name. So
to have eyes like that is wild.
And it's not like other teams don't do that. It's just some of these bigger players, like they want that. They appreciate
that relationship. It's been built.
And I think with issues like that are happening in Georgia, where you're dealing with players that are getting in a lot of trouble. I mean, not just legal trouble, but there's obviously discipline issues and stuff like that. Whether Kirby Smart wants there to be discipline issues or culture issues, they do seem to happen and they do seem to exist. But you've got families that are like, I don't want to send my kid into that. And they're going to tell their kids not to go to Georgia, which is going to hurt Georgia's recruiting. Now, for me personally, don't care about that. That doesn't bother me. But
nobody should go to Georgia.
Yeah, I mean, for real. Unless you just want to play for national championships or whatever.
Yeah. What loser wants to do that?
But anyways, it's one of those things. Like you're correct. The money thing is right now really the lowest denominator for all these players coming in for the 2025-2026 class. Like that's that every school's got money,
right?
And it's really the relationships they're developing with the coach, or the coaching staff, the culture that's surrounding the school. All of the extra stuff. Texas may have Lamborghinis, but Tennessee's got a podcast for their it's all little things, but it's stuff like that. Like it's so I think that as we continue to go down this NIL path, we're going to see a bigger shift towards culture and those things. Those added things going to be the main pull for kids, just from a standpoint of why they're going to a specific school.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to culture and overall just trying to get offensive linemen, there's one school in particular I feel like it's always messed up with that, or they've been struggling with that. It's Colorado, man. And I have to mention them because I know I already mentioned it to you guys, but they're my game of the week. Colorado, and I have North Dakota State.
Nice little way.
North Dakota State, they can run the ball. I feel like overall they have a better, just within the trenches kind of players already kind of ready to go. And compared to Colorado does have the better skill set players, I believe. But I feel like with North Dakota State, I want to say I would not be surprised with an upset, but I feel like either way it's going to be a really close game with that. Like I don't know
what's the upset. Who's favored in this game?
Oh, Colorado is the one that's favored.
Are they favored? Okay.
Yeah, they're also playing at home.
Okay.
So first game, like first game of the year at home. Like it's a lot of things kind of going on there, but I feel like with the weight that North Dakota can move around just in the trenches and then just kind of own the running game, I feel like they kind of keep basically like all the skill players, all the offensive players that Colorado brings on the sideline. It's going to be really hard for you to score if you can't be on the field. Yeah, defense is score, but I don't know about their defense. Like,
yeah, I mean, we're talking about one of the top teams in the FCS last year, and we like to prop up Appalachian State as being like the spoiler team, and they're the spoiler team for FBS. But North Dakota and South Dakota, they love to play spoiler too. They're one of those. They're a very physical team. I want to say the stats are, just like kind of what you're talking about, Dennis, like North Dakota State is incredibly run heavy. So they are going to run that clock down, everything like that. And they're really going to test the defensive prowess of Colorado, which I don't think is going to be that much different than last year.
No.
Because they only reloaded through the portal. They had no recruits. So we'll just have to see.
Like both of North Dakota State's quarterbacks had over 600 yards, plus their main running back last year had over 700. So, like they know how to control the line. They know how to control the ball and keep everything to their end.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and I think the other thing that, Colorado is Colorado. Like, let's be real. Dion is, to me, I will say that to me, he's proven to be really good at talking. He's been proven to be really good at, maybe motivating a team, but has he really proven to be able to coach a team well?
Sure.
He definitely sets him up well to take care of his quarterback. Maybe not take care of him because he got hit so much last year, but he's focusing on his quarterback. He's focused on his, on Travis Hunter and on his other son, Shiloh. So, is that team going to be ready? You mentioned getting so many players from the portal. Well, yeah, you get that many players from portal. It's one thing to get, to fill some holes, to get a new backup, to do something like that. It's another thing to bring in a whole team and expect them to then go compete under a different system. And then, so we'll see. I don't expect much from Colorado. If they do better than they did last year, I would be, if they did a game better, if they won 5, I wouldn't be shocked. If they go to a bowl game, I would be surprised.
Sure. Yeah. We just lost Dennis. He had an internet connection issue, if you couldn't already tell, but he should be back. He's working on that. But yeah, and we won't move on until he gets back. But essentially, Colorado, I agree with you, Luke. If they get 5 wins this year, that'll be good. Like they'll have at least proven themselves in a different conference to some degree. Again, they're dealing with a more physical conference.
Yeah.
Being the Pac-12 or Pac-12, the Big 12.
The Big 12.
All the 12s.
Too many numbers.
There's so many numbers. But essentially, I think I would be surprised if they go more than 4 wins. I think this year, this weekend will really show kind of what they're made of. And because this is not a roll or pushover team.
Not at all.
Yeah. And it's a game that I'm not going to watch it 100%. I'm going to be watching it more or less, throughout the day. Because when does it go live? Did he already say that?
No, he didn't. It is. I'm looking it up right now.
Okay.
State, Colorado.
It's at 6 p.m. That's 6 p.m. I believe Mountain Time.
And that is on Thursday.
That is on Thursday. That is right. It's on Thursday.
So that's Thursday game.
So that's an easier one to catch. Let me add Dennis back in here. There's the Dennis. Hello there, Dennis.
Just in time. We're signing off, Dennis. We finished that.
We finished. We're still talking about Colorado. We didn't want to move on until you were back in the lobby.
I was kind of over it. I was like, you know what? I'm done. I said what I said.
Yeah. I'm going to get Michael in trouble. All them Coloradans will watching in on the show. They're going to arrive.
I'm like, hey, he's with the distance. He's fine. He'll survive.
Yeah. So Colorado, North Dakota State, that will be on ESPN.
And Dennis's pick is that North Dakota is going to win.
Yeah, I think with North Dakota, I feel like it's going to be just honestly less than 10 points. I really feel like, and if Colorado's able to escape, I feel like it's going to be set because they're skill position players.
Sure,
that's the only reason.
Sure.
Yeah, so, it benefits them that this is the first game, and so they're Travis Hunter is not going to have 4,000 plays under his belt.
He's going to have probably like close to like 14, 15 touches though.
Yeah,
sure. Yeah,
of course.
So yeah, it really could turn out to be similar to the TCU game last year. But I mean, again, if they're keeping, if I would say it's still a loss for Colorado, even if they win, but it's still like within 3 points. If North Dakota State is able to keep it within a touchdown, then like people need to calm down about how amazing Colorado is.
Right. Like if anything, they're gonna probably hype up North Dakota still, but I'm like, they deserve the hype, but it's still like Colorado for still getting votes to be top 25, like in the preseason. I'm like, no, you guys should be beating them by at least a couple touchdowns, if not a few.
Yeah,
sure. So, Luke, you want to tell us who your game of the week is?
Yeah. So my game of the week is Ohio State Akron. No, I'm just kidding. My game of the week is going to be LSU USC, our Sunday game. I think for me, the reason that this was my pick, because there were some good ones. You had Georgia Clemson. Obviously I will be watching my Buckeyes, but they're playing Akron, so that shouldn't be a game of the week unless they come out and just totally crap the bed.
You got Miami.
So there were some good, Miami, Florida. Some great games that I'm excited to watch. This one, I think the reason it catches my eye is because you've got two teams who did not live up to expectations last year, who had some glaring holes that, obviously Jaden Daniels did great last year. He won the Heisman. He got rocked every 3 games. You had USC with Caleb Williams, who had a defense that, it couldn't play Pee-wee. So it's kind of that
let down.
Yeah, both of their defenses were. And so now I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, we've got them at 13 and 23. So LSU is ranked 13 right now. USC is at 23. I think that's kind of generous for USC based on where they ended the season last year, based on losing the best player in college football last year. Which, by the way, I don't believe that he was. That's why but I think it's going to be an interesting game. And I think it's really going to prove where they are. Is LSU's defense stepping up as USC's new defensive coordinator? Is he going to be doing anything special with this team? Because they've both got talent. Both of them have talented teams, but what's going to happen? So I'm interested. And I believe they're playing in Las Vegas. I think LSU is the home team, but they're actually playing in Vegas, and that's a Sunday game. So that'll be a nice way to end out the weekend.
Yeah, well, no, it's not. That's not the end of the weekend for football.
Oh yeah, Florida State, Boston College plays on Monday.
Yeah, on Monday, which is again weird.
That's so crazy.
So it starts on Thursday, goes through Monday. Football's back.
When do I have time to work?
I know, right? But I agree with you. I think this is going to be an interesting game of two teams that both underperformed last year, but really two teams that also had no defense last year. And they both made arguably very good defensive additions in their coaching staff in the offseason. So I think that I think USC has technically more defensive raw talent than LSU does. But I will say that the coach that they brought in at LSU is a better defensive or a more proven defensive coordinator.
Sure.
And he was there at Missouri for years and consistently kept Missouri in the top 15 of defenses. So like that's pretty impressive. So if he's able to even replicate close to that with LSU, it's not going to be a shootout. But I've got a feeling it's going to be a shootout.
Yeah. Well, and that's I was looking at that. So the line is LSU -4. The over under is 64.5.
Oh my goodness.
So obviously the people who are actually putting their money where their mouth is don't expect the defense to have improved that much on either side of the ball. So
they think that defense is basically going to be non-existent still.
Yeah.
Well,
exactly.
Brian Kelly doesn't pay for players, so
Yeah.
I mean,
you know,
I wouldn't know that based upon their NIL valuation for 2025, but for 2024.
well, don't look at that. That's not.
I mean, yeah,
inconsequential.
Yeah.
So who's your pick on this, Luke?
I'm going to LSU.
Okay. Really?
Really? I am.
You always find a way to disappoint me, man.
Well, that's okay, and mainly it's because I knew I'd disappoint you, and I want to, but no, it's just one of those. Realistically, like I always hate these games that are at not a real home game for somebody. You should probably call it more home for USC than at LSU if you're in Vegas. Doesn't really make sense why LSU is the home team. So I mean, what is it? The home team usually is like a home adds about 3 points. So you're really saying this is about a 1 point game, in my opinion. Here,
sure.
And so based on that, I don't trust USC. I think last year it just kind of proved to me. It's kind of that prove it, prove me wrong. I'm going to LSU. There's really no rhyme or reason, I'll be honest. But USC just has to prove me wrong.
No,
I get that.
I get that, and I see where you're coming from too. Like I actually did like LSU for this, but I'm gonna have to go with USC personally on that one, man. I'm gonna have to tell you that. 5 hours away, like exactly how you said, from basically home. I'm like, no, USC's for that.
Well, and that's why I say like the lines, and that's why I hate the lines. LSU's not even close to a home team here.
No,
not even close.
Not. No, not really. And I mean, again, I also think LSU is going to win. But I have more confidence in the development that Brian Kelly has done with his offense than Lincoln Riley. I know that Lincoln Riley is known for his offensive prowess, but last year, even with all the weapons that he had, they barely won games. And I was just like, it's just hard. It's hard to, at that point, it's not defense. It's still your offense isn't able to keep up, which is an issue. And so, if last year looked a lot more like 2022 for USC, I would be going with USC for this game. But I think that Brian Kelly did more last year with what he had.
Yeah. Luke, just keep in mind, Michael's only right 33% of the time. So there's 3 games. There's 3 games this week, and he chose with you on one of them. There's a good chance you're going to be wrong.
And I chose with you on yours.
But here's the thing, I'm right more, so the odds are going to balance out in my favor. And that's okay. Hey, listen. There's a reason I don't gamble. There's a reason why I don't put money on things, because I could be right 100 times out of 100 when I'm not putting money on it. As soon as I start putting money on something, everything I say turns to. It's like, what's the opposite of Midas touch? It's like Midas crap. Like,
fair enough.
So I'm surprised you're going versus your the Big Ten teams, man. That's all.
Well, USC is not a big like. Of all the ones that came in, they're not the ones that I'm going to be.
They're the least Big Ten of all of them.
USC is the Michigan of the pack. So when they came over, that's how I see them. They're just another Michigan.
Yeah. I mean,
all right, Michael.
All right. So my game of the week is Notre Dame versus Texas A&M. Like we already established, there's already a bunch of amazing games this weekend. I mean, I really am interested to see what Miami does in Florida. I'm interested to see what Clemson and Georgia look like, but this game I'm even more interested in because one, Notre Dame has an incredibly small margin of error. They can't really afford to lose more than 2 games, period, all year. And they have got an arguably cakewalk schedule to some degree, with the exception, with this game being one of the exceptions. And normally I wouldn't give Texas A&M this much credit, or really, I shouldn't say this. I wouldn't give a school that has a brand new head coach this much credence, aside from the fact that we're dealing with Mike Elko, who we loved at Duke last year.
Yep.
Yeah. His defense was
his defense was
so much fun to watch.
His offense was surprisingly good too.
Yeah.
And he moved over to a place that he's got a lot of 5 stars now at his disposal. Because how in the world Texas A&M was able to maintain a lot of their roster after Jimbo Fisher left? Like, I'm surprised that those kids actually stayed.
I mean, I'm not surprised. I've seen videos of their facilities where I'm like,
sure.
Like, that's amazing.
as some people will say, like, they're a juggernaut in waiting. They're a program that has underachieved for so long, but has the right stuff in play. They're kind of like Miami in that regard. And so I think for Texas A&M, you're getting a phenomenal coach, and he now has access to far more talent than he did at Duke. And I think, like, so me personally, even though I think that Notre Dame is returning quite a good chunk of their talent. They're not as bad. They're kind of like middle of the pack, but they're returning enough of their defense and enough of their offense to be dangerous. They're bringing in Duke's old quarterback, so it's going to be a nice little funny little, it'll be a little parody kind of thing there. But I think that's going to play in Texas A&M's favor, and the reason why is because I think Mike Elko is going to know how Riley Leonard knows how to play. And like,
you're good. You don't suck. You're good.
Yeah. And so I think he's going to find ways to counteract that play. And so I really have a hard time believing that Notre Dame is going to go in to Kyle Field and beat Texas A&M. So I expect it to be an incredibly close game. But Texas A&M has had the raw talent for years, and I'm honestly kind of grateful that Tennessee isn't playing them this year and played them last year, because it would be a much different game this year. And so I think it's going to be within like 3 to 4 points is what we're looking at. But I think it's Texas A&M for the win.
I feel like with all the things you stated, I feel like I would agree with that too. I actually like Riley Leonard as a player, but I feel like if you already have a head coach that knows you in like basically inside and out, and like as you mentioned earlier, the way that he had his defense there, if he's able to replicate even like say like 75% of that, Texas A&M is going to be nasty. Like it's going to be just so much fun watching their defense play.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I actually might be a little higher on Notre Dame the more that I've gotten to see them over the offseason. I think that Marcus Freeman's going to come into his own. I think last year you saw him with a transfer quarterback with, Sam Hartman. Is that right? That he did some good things, but there were just some little coaching errors that he made that, he cleans up, he cleans that up. He definitely beats Ohio State last year. It's just, I think he's going to make the leap. I like the additions that they made. I've got Notre Dame winning. Again, this is one of those, is there a rhyme or reason? Not really. I think that that Notre Dame has kind of been this far away for a few years. There's always been just like a play here, a play there, a call here, a call there. And I think this is the year they put it together. Like you said, their schedule is not not the cakiest of cakewalks, especially now that Georgia Tech did what they did, because they've got Georgia Tech in there. They got Texas A&M. I think the Florida State game, I think I almost flip-flopped their Florida State and Georgia Tech, where I'm like, oh, Florida State doesn't look as much of a foe, and Georgia Tech might. And then they got USC at the end, which again, we're going to see how they do. But I like Notre Dame this year. I think they're kind of poised to be that team that makes some upsets. Like you said, they can't lose 2. They lose 2, they're probably out of the playoff. But I got them winning.
Fair enough. No, I mean, they're the more established program for sure. So I mean, it's like I get it. Like, it's like my only confidence comes in the fact that you're going to see Elko be able to make use of a roster that is incredibly talented that has just been
yeah.
mishandled for the past.
And that's when you've got a coach who did so much with what he had at Duke, who is not a football school. I mean, maybe they're becoming one. Who knows?
Yeah.
But yeah, and then you get him to a top 25 team that he's going to have that capabilities. But there's just I kept wanting to say Texas A&M, and then I always just like but so I'm just putting it out there. Notre Dame.
I get it, man. I get it. So, well, what do y'all think below? So comment below what you guys think is your game of the week. If you think that our opinions are correct, or if you want to disagree, feel free to engage. If you think that FSU isn't overrated at all, and you think that Georgia Tech is now being overrated, let us know. If you think that the spring portal should be closed and the one before, the bowl game is the perfect one.
The bowl game portal.
The bowl game portal is the perfect one. And if you think that Connor Stallions didn't cheat, I don't know, we didn't even cover that, but that was news for today too.
He said he didn't.
He said he did.
One source.
No, so the funniest thing about it to me, and I have not watched it. I don't even know if I want to, but the funniest one was they had a video of Connor Stallion saying, I can't recall. They're like, did you go to this game? Were you on the side? I can't recall. And then there was Dave Portnoy saying, oh yeah, it's Connor Stallions. Oh yeah, he told me it was him. And it was just like, oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
Without getting into too much into it, I wouldn't, as a Ohio State fan, I would not recommend you watch the Netflix special. The reason being is because he's just gaslighting people the entire.
Oh yeah,
he's 100% gaslight. And Netflix did not do their job. If they're trying to actually make a documentary to actually get to the bottom of something and investigate something, then they failed. If their entire thing was just to rile up the college football, fan base, then all the fan bases, then that they did that.
This was a money
I would
grab.
love to just watch Luke just watch it now, just because I know he would be just like, this is bull.
Here's the thing. If you had me watch it 6 months ago,
sure,
when it was in like the heat of when it had come out, that probably would have been me. At this point, I just want to know what the truth is. I just want to know what's going on. Like, you can't change it. But the thing that blows my mind, we won't get into it, but it's just like, it is gaslighting. Netflix made a money grab. They went, hey, we need to get this documentary out. Somebody's got to let him tell his story. So they're paying him. All he's doing is getting a bag to sit there and go, yeah, I don't recall it. I'm just really good at my job. I don't know what you're talking about.
I'll give him this. He probably doesn't remember because he's not used to being in front of the camera.
That's right.
Like, he's used to being behind the camera. So he's like, I don't recall. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I was too busy.
Right.
Anyway, so comment below what your thoughts on Connor Stallions are. That's all we care about now.
Yep.
But thanks for joining tonight's tailgate. Come back next week, same time, same bat channel, same bat time. And you heard me right.
Okay.
And we'll be back to recap week 1. Hopefully, all of us are cheering. Except for Luke and his Notre Dame pick. And and we'll hit you up next week. Again, comment below, share, and subscribe. Thanks again. Have a good night.